Wow, you nailed that. Proud of you. I'm uh, I'm Hunter, and I'm here with Scott. Scott, how you doing, my friend?
So good. So good.
Well, you know what it's time for, Scott. It's everyone's favorite time on the podcast. It's time for Hunter to get on his knees. It's time to suck that Marvel dick because we
Suck
have
that dick. Suck that dick.
we have a new Marvel movie, and it's Doctor Strange, and I have plenty to say about this movie, but I'm gonna I'm gonna kind of defer here because I feel like I am just the big I'm the big just kind of asshole when it comes to these movies. Like I'm the one who's always like, "Oh, this is what I thought," blah blah blah. But it would be very interesting to get the point of view from someone who's not familiar with the character. So, Scott, what were you thinking? As you were watching this, and going in, I'm very curious.
So yeah, going in, absolutely no reference for Doctor Strange for me personally. I to be honest with you, this is the first time hearing about him as a comic book character or as a character in general, as a Marvel character, which goes goes to show just kind of the brilliance of Marvel at this point. Um, but going into it, really no expectations, having not really known a lot about Doctor Strange. Um, Obviously, huge fan of Benedict Cumberbatch, so really intrigued to get into this movie and see what he has to offer to it. A lot of excellent actors and actresses. I'm going to butcher his name. Chiwetel,
Chiwetel Ejiofor. That's
Edgifer.
yeah.
A huge fan of him.
Yep.
Rachel McAdams is up and down, but I'm usually a fan of hers.
Oh, I wish he was up and down. I'm sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
Mads
sorry, not too late.
Mikkelsen was great in 007. Tilda Swinton is excellent. I think she's.
Yes, she is.
I feel like I don't know. No, I don't know for sure, but she feels like a method actor or actress.
Oh God, yeah, yeah.
And she just gets 100% immersed in her characters, which I totally respect. Just going into it, knowing the actors and the actresses, pretty excited about it because based on previous Marvel movies, you know where the bar is, you know the kind of level of action and storyline that they bring to every movie. So definitely excited about it. I was with my fiance Brittany, and she was really excited about it. She was super pumped about watching this movie. So yeah, just kind of a low level of excitement, but real low expectations for what the character was and the storyline in general. So yeah, that was just kind of my expectations.
Okay, so let me throw a little bit in here. So I read some Doctor Strange as a kid. Not a lot because he's always been one of those characters that just hasn't. I mean, at least in my opinion, really been able to sustain his own comic run. Like he would show up with like the Hulk and Thor and Spider-Man comics, and you're like, oh shit, that's cool. Doctor Strange is here, but as far as by himself, he's never, in my opinion, again, he's just never been able to sustain a consistent run. So I was very curious how they're going to handle the movie, and they got one of the best things they could have done. They got Scott Derrickson to direct this, who of course did Sinister, which is like as little horror as I watch, he Sinister's awesome. Sinister's really fucking amazing. So you see his horror background really come through here because I'm gonna make I think somewhat of a bold prediction. I think Doctor Strange might have the Oscar locked up for visual effects because the visual effects in this movie, Scott, I don't know about you, there were a couple of points where I went, Jesus, it dude, it tripped me out, but in the best way. And
What a great 3D movie, though, yeah? What
for
an excellent
once,
use of 3D.
for once, it's been so long since, like, in general, I've seen a good 3D movie, and this movie actually made incredible use of 3D. And again, I fully acknowledge I was high as hell going in this movie, so all the colors, it was like, oh my god. But seriously though, you want to talk about a movie that took advantage of 3D? So to kind of jump in here, so Stephen Strange, he's a neurosurgeon, and he's brilliant. Like, I mean, you know, I don't claim to know. I've never been a big science guy. Just I'm no Bill Nye, but but they did a good job explaining the science in here and just showing that he's a badass like neurosurgeon, and he calls out this other neurosurgeon in like the most dick way, like early on in the movie. But I was laughing at it partially because it reminded me of Frank Underwood, and that made me go like, well, okay, you kind of had it coming. But he's brilliant, and the movie does a really good job of showing you how brilliant he is, but at the same time he cares about people more than he lets on. And so he gets into a car accident which damages his hands. And by the way, Scott, I don't know about you, it's an ends to a means, but dude, Superman wouldn't have survived that car crash. Like, it was a car crash. I was like, oh my god. Like, I felt terrible for him when he crashed his car. I was like, Jesus. But so he ends up going to seeking out the Ancient One after he meets Benjamin Bratt's character, Jonathan, which was awesome. I love Benjamin Bratt, Miss Congeniality, hello. But, but, but their scene, the movie starts a little slow for me, to be totally honest, but once he meets Benjamin Bratt, it felt like the movie kicked into overdrive for me. Yeah, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I love the way that Marvel can. I know we're going to go into this a little bit further, but that they can take an unknown character and turn his storyline into something that's really intriguing and really draws you in. The car accident scene. I mean, like you sort of knew that it was coming, but at the same time, the way that they played it out was so intense and like brutal. Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like I love the way that Marvel can create an origin story, and 100% totally agree on how they did it in this one, and they continue to do it.
Yeah. So I mean, I thought that was very interesting. But yeah, no, the car crash was brutal too, and I was in a packed theater. I went and saw this at like 11:30, and the theater was packed. I saw it in for 3D, and so he wakes up and he has all these pins in his hands, and I heard people go like, oh, like like the crowd did that. I was like, wow, you guys are into this shit. But
oh no, is he okay?
But no, it was cool though. I was like, yeah, because it's his first movie, they'll totally kill him. But it was cool though, like to hear people going like, oh my god, is he gonna be all right? But he is fucked up after this accident. Like, make no mistake. And Rachel McAdams, I think you put it perfectly. She goes up and down for me. The last kind of blockbuster type thing I remember seeing her in was Sherlock Holmes, and I freaking hated her in that. I gotta admit, I enjoyed her in this. I enjoyed her in this a lot more than I thought I would. They used her just enough, and her and Benedict Cumberbatch had enough chemistry that it worked between them. So let's kind of just run everything down. So Tilda Swinton plays the Ancient One. Tilda Swinton is one of my favorite actresses. After, of course, just being in Hail Caesar recently, she was in, of course, Grand Budapest. She was in Trainwreck. She was in We Need to Talk About Kevin, which is, honest to God, one of the best movies I've seen in the last 5 years. I love that movie. She's an incredible actress, and she was really awesome in this. There's this point, and I was thinking about you, Scott, when I was watching the scene where Doctor Strange is just talking shit to her. It's like, there's no such thing as magic. You're like a liar. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, no. I'm like, don't do that. And she like knocks him out of his body in a way that I went, oh, that is amazing. And she fucks with him a little bit, and rightfully so, because he's an arrogant prick. But man, I thought she was amazing in this, to be totally honest. So yeah, kind of your thoughts on her.
Yeah, just like I said before, one of those actors that really just gets immersed in their character, and she was just like the calm throughout. Something I didn't really expect, because I watched all of the trailers for it, that she had sort of a like a lighter, funny side, not a funny side, but she was able to poke fun every once in a while, and kind of to remind Benedict Cumberbatch kind of what was actually going on. Um, Man, he plays a great asshole, doesn't he? He's such a lovable asshole, and the same way he plays Sherlock Holmes.
Dude, so it's really ironic you bring that up because the big joke amongst nerds now is Robert Downey Jr. playing Tony Stark, or is Tony Stark playing Robert Downey Jr. And
Right.
and when Robert Downey Jr. played Sherlock Holmes, it was the exact same thing. It was just Sherlock Holmes, it was just Iron Man, except in the earlier time. And in many ways, Benedict Cumberbatch's Stephen Strange is Sherlock, except he's just a neurosurgeon and he's kind of more likable. But
And he's got an American accent.
and okay, so that was the one thing I gotta tell you. I was horrified about the American accent.
Exactly.
But I gotta admit, I honestly forgot he had it within like 5 minutes. I'm like, oh,
Right.
okay.
It took a little bit of getting used to
It did,
because
yeah.
you just kind of picture you're not used to that, but he's really able to. He doesn't make it awkward.
Yeah, so I was actually quite impressed he was able to pull it off. So kudos, sir. But yeah, so let's talk about the visuals here. The visuals are mind-bending in the best way possible. From when he gets knocked out of his body and they say the multiverse, which is cool to know that they're acknowledging that, to a final confrontation with a Doctor Strange villain I will not spoil. To his first interaction with oh god, I'm gonna butcher his name. Cassius, played by Mads Mikkelsen, aka Hannibal, which makes me oh so happy that he was in this movie. So
I love that guy.
So here's where I get into a complaint. I thought that for what he was, Mads Mikkelsen did a good job, but this goes back to the one thing you can kind of, not for every movie, but you can kind of point at for Marvel films, is that they need to give their villains more time. They really do. And you have someone like Mads Mikkelsen who's so talented, and I thought they could have used him more, and they didn't, and that just kind of pissed me off, to be totally honest with you. I'm like,
There wasn't a ton of backstory for
not a ton.
what he was doing and what his cause was. Feel like they kind of rushed that a little bit, especially with the books, and feel like they definitely could have gone a little bit more in depth with that, especially with his character in general. But not only that, but the kind of without spoiling it, the overall presence of the evil that's going on. I felt like I wanted a little bit more out of that coming from someone who isn't completely familiar with this character.
Yeah.
We got so much of Stephen Strange and his backstory and the people in his life, and even the Ancient One and what's going on there. But I totally agree. I think the villain is slightly lacking, and it was more of just like a piece in the story of Doctor Strange, and not even like necessarily. It obviously comes about to be the centerpiece of the movie because it has to. But I feel like a little bit of either backstory or explanation would have helped me a lot with kind of grasping that entire concept.
Yeah, I mean,
But I mean, with the visuals you were talking about, it's like Inception meets the Sorcerer. And I don't mean, but I actually like the magic aspect. I like that they're kind of branching off and trying to tackle magic that they really we haven't seen yet from Marvel.
No, they have, and that was the thing that really made me genuinely happy, is that the visuals in this movie, like the visuals are worth seeing this movie in 3D alone, to be totally honest, because this really reminded me of The Matrix. like they clearly sat down and watched Inception, and they're like, how can we blend this with Matrix? Because the last like third of this movie, the visuals just get mind-bending, and I mean that in the best way, in like the most complimentary way. Especially the last fight scene, you're like, what the shit? It's wonderful, and I truly mean that. It's wonderful. Um, they did a great job with the visuals, and the last fight scene felt epic, but it was different, which I appreciated. This, as far as an origin story, is very similar to Iron Man. As far as the beats of it, I mean, if there's you can definitely kind of compare it to this. But I like the last battle in this actually better than I liked it in the first Iron Man. I was actually quite impressed with how they handled the third act's boss fight, if you will.
Boss level.
Yeah, exactly. To this, and so just to go through a couple of the Easter eggs, I believe I said this on one of our broadcasts that I said that the eye of or oh God, I always butcher how you say this. God, how do you say the name of the freaking stone? Agamotto. Thank you. Is the time stone. I said that like a year ago, and I was like, "Yep, there it is. Cool. I'm proud of myself. I'm like nerd," but but it's very cool that you see him put it back, which just means, oh, Thanos is gonna get it. How's he gonna get it? So, just as a nerd, I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. So that was pretty cool. And then the biggest thing that I got to say before I throw it back to you, before we give our ratings, Benedict Wong plays Wong, who ends up being really basically the Alfred to Doctor Strange's Bruce Wayne, if you want to put it like that. I'm so happy they gave him more to do, because in the comics he's pretty much just a butler, like an Oriental house Negro, if you will, and I was but I was actually happy that they had him as like a badass librarian who like knew all the books and what they like contained. I'm like, oh, cool, you actually gave him purpose. That's awesome. Good job. Someone clearly sat down and went, we can't have him just be this racist, like, butler. Like, we need to give him something more. And they did a good job of integrating that into the movie. By the way, Tilda Swinton, I know people are kind of pissed because, hey, she's white and she's playing, someone who's, I believe, Chinese in the comics. Oriental, I'm just going to cover my bases, but honestly, at this point, they did a decent job, I thought, of showing like multiple races in the movie. So it didn't bother me, if that makes sense. I get why, if you're Oriental, you could be upset about it. I honestly do, but it wasn't distracting to me like it wasn't like Gods of Egypt distracting, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because, I mean, at least they had, like, other Oriental people in the movie, so I went, okay, you're not just whitewashing this entirely, but, yeah, so I didn't mind it, is what I'll say. I mean, did that kind of run through your mind a little bit, or?
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that criticism, honestly, and not having seen it before, I didn't know that she was supposed to be of that descent, but the whole, like, shaved head and, like, mocks and things that she wore really kind of gave off the impression of a foreign kind of vibe. So to me, it wasn't really like, it didn't stand out to me as, oh, whoa, this is not very authentic. But because they had so many different characters and so many different ethnicities and races in it, that it didn't take away from the movie to me at all.
Okay, so getting to spoiler territory. So if you give us like 2 minutes if you have not seen this movie, which you should have by now. But the 2 after credit scenes are awesome. The first one with Thor, so it all but confirms that Doctor Strange is going to be in Thor Ragnarok next year, which, yay! So that's probably when maybe the Time Stone gets stolen by Thanos, I would think, maybe. And then second, I know we said like the villain was done, they should use the villain more. Chiwetel Ejiofor, who plays Mordo, he is Doctor Strange's, he's the Joker to his Batman, and when you see him take magic away from Benjamin Pratt to Jonathan, I'm like, and make him a cripple again. I'm like, you're a piece of shit. Like that was like what ran through my mind. So it made me go, wow, you are a villain already. So I'm very.
But you could, but I mean, you could totally. I totally understood where he was coming from with
I did
being
too.
feel like he was being betrayed, and like I felt like that those extra scenes really helped solidify the feelings that you saw throughout the actual cinematic part of the movie.
No, I totally agree with you. And in the comics, from what I remember, Mordo is just kind of jealous of Doctor Strange and just kind of rages out that way. But when you find out something about the Ancient One that we won't spoil here, you get why he's upset and why he's hurt. And I went, wow, you're actually pretty sympathetic for your stance. But yeah,
And that's interesting. It's interesting to hear the comic book side of it because I didn't feel like he had a lot of jealousy towards Doctor Strange during the movie. They didn't really portray that too much. And obviously, there's a little bit of tension because he was kind of the new guy, but it didn't really seem like a lot that they really tried to emphasize that.
Yeah, but I was okay with that because you felt the jealousy as like from the point where the sanctum is kind of raided. From that point on, I felt like, oh, okay, now they're developing it, and by the end of the movie, he's like, go fuck yourself. So I get why Stephen Strange is the way he is, but I honestly felt sympathetic to Mordo, which I was actually quite impressed that they were able to pull that trick. So with the inevitable Doctor Strange 2, the Doctor Strange sequel, because this has made over $300 million, including domestic and international. So yeah, there will be a sequel in 1 week. So this is a never hit for Marvel. They're the only company where every film they've made has opened up at number 1, except for Pixar, which is insane. So I think this is like the 12th Marvel film that's opened up at number 1.
And this is done, and something I notice is this is done by Marvel Studios, which is different than Marvel. Am I right?
So
what's the difference here?
So before, I believe it was Iron Man 3 was the first movie, but all the Marvel movies were distributed by Paramount, but now Marvel Studios is its own studio. So I believe
it's its own entity.
Exactly. So I believe Iron Man 3 was the first movie under the official Marvel Studios, but yeah, Disney is very happy that they bought out Marvel because their films have just gotten it's incredible the consistency they've been able to keep. I know everyone gives me crap for you're such a Marvel fanboy, but they keep delivering insanely good films, and it's kind of incredible that the only one that's been shit was Thor: The Dark World, which is terrible. Like it's a terrible movie. But getting my final thoughts here, oh my God, there's so much to talk about with this movie, but seeing seeing the cloak was freaking awesome. That
was a great adage there.
Yeah, and I'm totally blanking on the name of the cloak. The cloak of, oh my God, why can't I remember it? I'm so ashamed as a nerd.
It's the levitation.
Thank you. Yeah. Been drinking Gordon's. What do you want from me? But no, like the cloak, and there's a scene where he like wraps the cloak around himself and it like flaps in the wind. I was like, oh fuck, that was a cool action shot. Like it was really well done. The one other complaint I will give is that some of the humor didn't work for me. There's this joke.
Exactly.
There's this joke about Wong like having just one name, just one word name. And the joke was funny at first, and they kind of ran it a little far into the ground. So, I mean, it didn't happen a lot, but there were a couple of points where I went, that was a little awkward. But overall, though, man, I enjoyed this so much. This really reminded me of Ant-Man quite a bit in the sense that I went in, I was like, oh, this will probably be good. But then it went, oh no, we can actually be better than that. So this was really well done. I'm gonna give this a solid A-. I saw this at early matinee for like $9 for 3D. If I had paid $13.50 for this, I would have been totally okay. So yeah, A- for me.
Yeah, we are. We're on sync tonight, I think. Not which doesn't happen very often.
True.
Just and we say this all the time about Marvel movies, but they have the formula. They have what it takes to continuously churn out these blockbuster movies that just rake in the money. The Cloak was excellent. Just the action in general is something that I think Marvel really prides themselves on, without having to go over the top and feel like it's a Batman movie that where it's just like explosion and fight scene and explosion, which can be fun sometimes, but I feel like they really know how to corral that and to really put it towards the plot. And this movie had so much depth to it, and I felt like they were really trying to tell a story. The only gripes that I have was 100% agree with you. The humor sometimes I feel like Marvel tries to force, and sometimes certain movies are really made for that, like Guardians. That's the best part about the movie, is that it can be so funny at certain points. But I feel like this movie didn't really call for a lot of the comedy that they tried to put into it, like the Wong thing, where the one name deal that they kept coming back to. There's a couple other scenes that I kind of cringed at. So that I felt like that kind of fell flat. Rachel McAdams is not my favorite character in this movie, but she definitely played the role that she was meant to, in the fact that was the love interest, and she played that well, but she was not really like the highlight of this movie.
I thought she did just enough to
exactly. She played her role absolutely. But yeah, it wasn't one of those movies that just like blew me away. I felt like the special effects were amazing, but it was kind of like, I feel like people are starting to do the same things with special effects, in the way that, like the streets and the buildings are all like shifting like on top of each other. They kind of show it in the trailer a little bit, so it's not really a spoiler, but the way that they kind of melt time and reality, in that way, I feel like it's been played out. But the other ways that they're able to, with kind of the glass encased surroundings that they have, I forget what they actually call that, and the way that they open portals, and it's all very magical, but at the same time you get that feeling of realism and of like the fact that Stephen Strange is experiencing this for the first time and really just being blown away. There's the scene when he's first introduced into these multiple dimensions, and he's like flying through them all, and it's like almost too much because there's just so much going on. I loved it. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Got to give this one an A-. It wasn't the best Marvel movie that I've seen, but they know what they're doing. They shouldn't change their formula one little bit, because you get the story that you want, you get the characters, you have the firepower of these actors who know exactly what they're doing, like Tilda Swinton and Benedict Cumberbatch. Those guys kill it almost every time. So they know what they're doing, and you're not. I never thought that you were. There's you might have a bit of a bias, but it's all absolutely justified. So yeah, I really like this movie. Got to give it an A-.
Yeah, but between the Civil War and Luke Cage, like Marvel has solidified their brand for me.
Yeah, not even to mention their TV shows.
Yeah, exactly.
They're covering all bases right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's kind of insane. And then just to give Disney another thumbs up, we have Rogue One coming out in just over a month. Which
so excited!
Yeah, right. Oh, it's gonna be so good. But and Matt Mikkelsen is in that movie. I'm so excited. But sorry. Anyways, but Guys, have you seen Doctor Strange? If you haven't, you should. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. You can follow us here on SoundCloud at TheRealPineapple775. You can follow Mr. Scott Neerman on Twitter at
Newman the First.
and you can follow Mr. Colin O'Neill. We love you, Colin, at The Real O'Neill, and follow yours truly on the Twitter at JHunterRealPineapple, and like us on Facebook at The Real Pineapple. We will have reviews up this weekend for Arrival, which I'm very curious about, The Legend of Tarzan, which I'm less curious about, and we'll have a review up for Luke Cage Season 1. Me and Scott have kind of talked about off mic, and we will have, I'm sure, some differing views on that. It's better than Daredevil. Guys, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.